The church and its people are meant to live lives that don't conform to culture, but stay true to biblical truths. John Tyson urges Christians to offer a beautiful resistance. What is good, YouTube? My name is Ash Porter and welcome to my channel. And today I'm looking at this book, Beautiful Resistance by John Tyson. Now this is another Christian book, so just beware. If you're a Christian, if you want to learn about Christian books, stay tuned. If not, maybe another video might be better for you. But John Tyson is the lead pastor, like the leader of a church in New York, and has been there for about 20 years, I think. The geezer's originally from Australia, but moved there to church plant, and he's also written, I think, like 3 other books. Now, something you should know about me is, although I am a Christian and my faith is incredibly central to my life, I tend not to read a lot of Christian books. Now, this isn't because they're not good, it's just because I don't always find them fun to read, if that makes any sense. I find that often Christian books like this, they can be quite repetitive. It can be the same thing, just said in a slightly different way by a different pastor or preacher or writer. And yeah, I just get bored with a lot of Christian books. I don't find that they pull my attention, that they put like a gripping, and that I really want to read and learn from them. Don't get me wrong, there are some really good books out there that I can recommend, but that's my general trend. However, occasionally I am given a Christian book by someone or recommended it by someone, and when that is the case, I will go away and read it. And this, Beautiful Resistance, was one of those cases. I was recommended it by my friends at One Life Leadership, a charity which I mentioned before, which I'm have worked for and are friends with, and if they recommend me a book, I know it's worth reading. And actually, I will say, as far as Christian books go, this is one which is actually worth your time. Now, although I don't think this book is perfect and I didn't love it the whole time, there are a few key bits which I'm going to talk about in the key information part that I did actually really enjoy. And you know, the aim of this book is basically to show Christians that there's so many areas of life that we seem to be compromising in for the sake of fitting in with culture, and that actually he wants to encourage us that we can resist these things without like being horrible people or completely rejecting culture, but actually going back to basic biblical principles. Now, this may sound like this book is going to be full of like condemnation and judgment and all that kind of stuff. You listen to Eminem, you're going to hell. How did you know? Laughing at funny jokes? No longer allowed. No, please stop. Remember that time you wore a fashionable piece of clothing? You're doomed. I'm sorry. I feel so judged right now. But I promise you, it is nothing like that. That actually, you know, for me reading this book, I felt a really healthy challenge, and I didn't feel condemned. I didn't feel judged. I just felt like someone saying, hey, this could be a really good way to try and live. Guys, just before we continue with the key information, can I please maybe ask nicely of you, would you please consider liking this video, subscribing to my channel, and sharing this with your friends or family or whoever? It would really mean a lot to me and I'd appreciate it so much. But anyway, let's get back into the video. So the overall message of this book is pretty simple. It's that as Christians, it seems like we have made a lot of compromises with the way we act, the way we function, the way we are, for the sake of fitting in with culture and society. Now, this isn't always wrong, but Tyson points out a few different areas where he thinks we could offer resistance, where we can think about changing this. And each chapter is one of those different areas. Obviously, I can't cover all the chapters, but I'm going to do the bits that stood out to me. So the first thing I want to touch on, discuss, talk about is a quote that I'm just going to read to you. And he says, "We ache for peace in the world, but many of our lifestyles are a form of violence to ourselves and those we love." Jeez, I don't know about you, but for me, that is a quote which hits hard. And I think the reason it hits hard because there is a truth to it, isn't there? That actually all of us, parts of our lifestyles are probably really damaging to ourselves, and not just ourselves but also to those around us. Like whether we think about your own physical health, the Bible, like your body is a temple that we have been gifted this life. Are we looking after our bodies? Are we looking after ourselves? Are we looking after our mental health, our spirituality, our emotional health? There's so many different areas of life where it feels like the way we live, the way society can sometimes tell us how to live, it can be damaging, sometimes obviously, sometimes not as obviously. Particularly in the book when Tyson is talking about this, he kind of wants to focus in on this idea of overworking. So, our culture, or maybe not as much anymore, it's starting to shift a little bit, but there's definitely been this big drive on work hard, like long hours. More work equals more success, equals, you have to work an 80-hour week if you're going to be successful, if you need to make enough money, all this kind of stuff. I guess it's like that analogy that people use of like a hamster wheel, where we're just caught in the wheel and we can't stop running. However, Tyson, and he isn't alone in this, there are plenty of Christian authors, but also secular writers, scientists who are kind of trying to endorse this more and more, realizing how good it is. A more healthy lifestyle where we're not in that constant overdrive, not constantly running in the wheel, but we are learning when to work and when to rest. And this idea of slowing down is all about rejecting this idea of like being addicted to work or constantly chasing achievement or this or that or the other, the expectations that society can put on us. But actually it's about slowing down, finding the value in our life, in the formation of ourselves, in our relationships, in where we are right now, in being grateful for what we do have, and ultimately as Christians, seeking God's presence. This kind of stuff, this whole idea which can be linked back to Sabbath, has been talked about so many times. I've read so much about it, so if you want to know more, look into that. The second thing which stood out was this idea of exclusion, where we live, like if we're being honest, in a society which promotes exclusion, or it promotes tribalism, which promotes us and you, them and us, like differences in people. Miroslav Volf describes this as the persistent practice of exclusion. It's interesting, isn't it, how our society, where we claim to want to be inclusive, we claim to want to allow people of all religions, all creeds, all genders, sexual orientations, races, whatever it is, we claim to want to be a society which is open to all that. But actually, I find often people's reaction is either to push people away and say, I'm having nothing to do with those people, or to aggressively oppose it. And we see this all the time on social media, and not just social media, we see it in real life, in the news all the time, of people who have taken this too far. And ultimately what this does is it spreads hatred and it spreads contempt. Tyson, like many other Christians, highlights that Jesus in his life in the recorded Gospels does everything he can to break down those type of barriers. He's not interested in excluding people or making an inner circle that's really tight and hard to get into. He was open for everyone. He purposely sought out those who society rejected, those who they pushed away or openly opposed. He went and spent time with those people. And he just wasn't interested in this idea of us and them. He wanted to welcome everyone into God's kingdom. Contempt, which I read a lot about in a book recently called Tribe. I'll put the video here, you can go check it out. It's really interesting because it's that feeling of like hatred and animosity that people feel within wartime, except it's been normalized into our society now. To feel contempt for someone is like a really normal thing. And there's this calling for us as Christians And even those who aren't Christians, if you're not a Christian watching this, I think there's this calling to be a human race who rejects that and beautifully resists this cultural norm of us and them. I really like this from Tyson. I think it's just a hard thing for a lot of people to buy into. The final thing I want to highlight in this book is a chapter which is all about honouring people. And Tyson describes honouring people as one of the most beautiful and neglected virtues in the world today. For some this may seem like quite a bold, accusing statement, that we don't honour people, that it's neglected. But if I'm being really honest, like reflecting on my life, I can only speak for myself and what I observe as well in wider society, but it may not be a factual truth. But it seems like that is the case, that it seems like honouring people isn't an easy thing, and therefore it seems to be put to the side often. I think one of the main reasons for this is we get so caught up in the I, we forget about the other. Just to clarify as well, honour, from what I understand it and how I think Tyson is describing it and using it, is all about showing people respect. It's about saying that you are a human who has value in my eyes, in our world, and I'm going to respect you because of that. It's not about, a respect which is earned by doing amazing stuff. It's a respect which is earned by being human. And again, Tyson refers back to Jesus. As Christians, he's the ultimate example of this. That much like the way he broke down boundaries and went to the people who society rejected, he also chose to honour people. People who would have had no respect, who would have been treated like dirt in that society. He chose to honour them, treat them as humans, to eat with them, dine with them, welcome them in. And he's a role model for us now. When it's so easy to get caught up in our selfishness and being all about ourselves, actually the offering a beautiful resistance in this culture is to choose to honour those people, anyone we come across. Now there is way more in this book which could be covered, but those are the three things that really stood out to me. If I'm being honest, like before even reading this book, this idea of honouring people had been on my mind for a while. It had been something that I'd just been thinking about, that I thought, I'm not nailing this, I'm not getting this right, but also I really don't think a lot of the people around me are getting this right either. And so naturally I was real excited when I discovered this book was going to have a chapter all about honouring people. I think what's really hard is that it just doesn't feel like a natural thing. To say to honour someone, that feels like it should be something we all do regularly as a normal thing. But I just don't think it is. Like, again, speaking for myself, I'm just so selfish that so often I don't think about other people enough. I don't think about the way I act or behave and the implications it will have on others enough. And I think when this idea of choosing to honour people is about shifting that mindset, so we're so much more often thinking about how we respecting other people rather than just thinking about ourselves. It's also one of those things that I feel like it's easier to do for your real close inner circle. Like for me, I probably honour Steph more than anyone else because she's someone who I love so deeply and care about so much, and so it comes much more naturally. However, this call that I think of this beautiful resistance that Tyson is talking about, and the model that Jesus says is honouring isn't just for our close circles, it's for everyone. And also, another thought I've had about this, what makes it hard is that I feel like honouring can be quite subjective. So for me, times when I feel most dishonoured, if I'm being really honest, is when people are late to stuff. And so for me, time has always been a really important thing, punctuality. For some reason, it's just something that I've, always been good at, on top of, and something that I really find important. Like, I hate being late to stuff. Not to say I am never late, you know, I am late sometimes. I make that mistake. I'm not perfect. I don't have like 100% track record. However, it is something that, you know, compared to the average person, I probably really value a lot. So when I'm like hosting something or in charge of something or just organizing something and people are late, I like really struggle with that. Like, it feels to me like they are not honoring me in that moment. However, that's the problem with honouring, because, you know, to honour me would be to be on time, to say, Ash, I've made this commitment for you and I'm gonna respect you and respect that commitment by being there when you asked. However, like, I can think of so many people I know that it's not that they are purposefully dishonouring me, it's that their like subjective honour system is so different to mine. For them, it isn't even on their radar that that's something that someone would consider like dishonouring to them. And so therefore, like, how are we meant to work around that? And then that also means that for me, there's probably so many things that I do that end up being really dishonouring to other people. Like, I feel like I'm being hilarious or I'm trying to honour them in one way or another, but I'm probably missing the mark because it feels like it's so subjective. So I guess my reflection on this and what I want to try and take away from this book and my learning for the next while is, you know, it seems like the best way to honour people is to get to know them. Like, yes, I do think, I just want to say that there will be objective, universal things that are honouring to people. I'm not denying that. There are basic things we can do that says to someone, I respect you, that I honour you, that I see you as a human, that I don't see myself above you or below you, but we are like, yeah, we're in this together and I honour you. But I do think that when it comes to this subjective idea, the best way to honour someone is to get to know them, to ask them about themselves, to work out who they are and how to best honour them. And there we go. That's what I'm taking away from this book. That's what's on my mind at the moment. And actually, you know, if that's the one thing I'm taking away from this book, I'm so glad I read it. This book really is worth a read. Go check it out. Go copy it or whatever. Give it a read because it is worth your time. I've been Ash Porter. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you next time.